No doubt, in any parliament, any politician tries to get political mileage in their debates. But to try to put the welfare of the country on the chopping block is a different matter altogether. And what have we seen in this last National Assembly, in this 10th Parliament? Attempts to cut the budget of the government and to cut the budget in important areas, very important infrastructure areas that we're going to be debating today. For instance, airstrips in the interior. How can we develop our interior if we do not develop the infrastructure in the interior? And how will that be done if it is being put on the chopping block? And although the court, even though they gave a preliminary ruling, has said that this is unconstitutional in the 12th Parliament, again we see this year, in the 10th Parliament, again we see this year that, I was thinking about 2012, and there we see this year that the budget again has been unconstitutionally cut once more in our country. But more than that, we have very important infrastructure projects to take our country forward, like the Amila Falls Hydro Project, which is essential as a infrastructure project. We know that one of the constraints of this country's development is the whole issue of cheap energy. And here was a project that was geared to deal with that issue. And here we see once more that it was sacrificed on the altar of narrow political objectives. But even more important, I've just seen the paper this morning as I got in, and I haven't yet seen the official statement from CFATF. But you will notice in today's headlines that Guyana would be blacklisted because of the failure to pass in the National Assemblies laws that will take, amendments to laws that will make our system equivalent to other constituencies within the Caribbean. And that is very important in fighting drug trafficking and fighting money laundering and fighting against terrorism, financing of terrorism, etc. That was the objective of this bill. And clearly, there has been talk about not enough time, but this bill has been in Parliament since April of this year. And it has a special select committee was set up, and all the actions we've seen to stymie the work of that committee, to damage the work of that committee, has not actually taken place. Has taken place, damage the work of the committee, and try to prevent the government from passing this kind of legislation. Guyana has been proved to be unique in some ways. While in the whole question of sanctioning governments, putting sanctions was to try to encourage governments to pass these type of legislation. But here in our society, it is the government that wants to pass this kind of legislation and being stymied by the opposition. Yet at the same time, you hear talk about which now, of course, by their action, we can say empty talk about the whole issue of fighting against drug lords and drug trafficking and money laundering. Because who are the ones that are exposing themselves by preventing the country from passing these type of legislation? Who will benefit from this? One will actually ask in that regard. So we see that I think that this kind of early training will help young people in the future not to fall into the same type of jeopardy that our country is presently facing by opposition who see themselves as only opposing, not only to act as an oversight and to act as an oversight to executive bodies, but also to see themselves as obstructing progress in order to promote narrow political interests within our society. Another issue that I see that you are debating is the whole question of the University of Guyana. And that is very, very important because in the world that we live in today, education is indispensable towards social and economic development of our society. That is being with science and technology are playing a bigger and bigger role in economic development in every society. And therefore, while that is so, therefore education itself has a vital role to play. And government has recognized this. If you want to just see that, you just examine the budgets of our country from 1992. And you will see that we have been investing the biggest amount of money that we have been investing is in the social sector of our country, in which education takes the largest sum of the social sector because of the recognition, the importance of education in the development of our society. And the University of Guyana has a unique role to play too, in the sense that it has created history, being the only university that has been created by a colonial people. There's no other colony, no other country that was a colony created a university as we did in 1963. And if you go back to the origins or to the thinking of what was the thinking at the time in establishing the University of Guyana, you will see that it was not only established because we wanted to create good professionals for the country's development, good, strong professional people, and the skills that an independent nation would have needed. But you will see very importantly that Dr. Jagan, who was the premier at the time, had also seen it as important in consolidating democracy, seen it as promoting democracy and creating basis for a more equitable society by providing opportunities for classes of people in our country that hitherto before then did not have the opportunity of having a university education. He also saw it, as I said, as being an equalizer. Even in his speech to the opening of the university, he pointed out that the top job of the country should not be the preserve of the rich and the well-born, as he put it, but it should be open to those who live in the most remote part of the interior, or those who are in the villages, in any villages, in the village within our society, that the top positions of our country must be made accessible to them as well. And that is one of the functions that the University of Guyana had to perform. UG itself has a very interesting history, before and after independence, how its role has evolved. However, it is very, very clear that the direction that we want to go now is to try to fulfill those dreams that our leaders in the past had for the university. So, my dear friends, I just want once more to congratulate you, congratulate the organizers. I think that this is something that is extremely healthy for our society, for creating a deeper appreciation for democracy, for at a very early and young age to know not only this deeper sense of democracy, but for the whole practice of parliamentary democracy to be inculcated in our youth, to me, will pay this country in the future great dividends. And I want to say that you, the participants, have this opportunity of not only to stop here, but in your future as you develop within your own society, to continue to defend and advance democratic forms of government, parliamentary democracy, so that our country can benefit and we can have a possibility of benefiting from all the reserves, all the intellect, and all the possibilities that we have within our society. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. To His Excellency, President Donald Ramotar, we'd like to make you an honorary member of the National Youth Parliament, and so I wish to invite our opposition leader to present our President with a gift and the Honorable Prime Minister to observe the presentation. I'd like to invite Mr. Juan Edgel Jr. to give our closing remarks. Let's welcome him.
Good day, one and all. We would like to thank Mr. Paul McCoy, Executive Director of National Youth Parliament, for his remarks this morning regarding our avenues towards which national...
Congratulating the organizers of this forum, the Youth Parliament, which certainly over the last 13 years has provided an opportunity for young people to make their voices heard on issues that are extremely important for us as a country. It is also important from another point of view that we want at a very early stage to inculcate the spirit of democracy in our young people in order to try to strengthen this forum and to strengthen our democracy in our country. And that is extremely important because I am of the view that without political democracy in a society, it will be impossible to have sustained economic and social progress within a country. And that opinion has been formed not only by the experiences we have in Guyana, although we have a lot of experience here in our country as far as parliamentary democracy is concerned, but it is formed from what has taken place historically and internationally in the world. There was a time, particularly noted in the 1970s, after the post-independence struggles of the colonies, former colonies, to get independence. At one time, there was a view that emerged that democratic norms, particularly parliamentary democracy, was an obstacle towards social and economic development. And they felt that a lot of time and money was constantly wasted in these debates, and when those efforts could have gone into other developments. But history has shown that most countries that adopted that kind of position were left back in a very far way as far as social and economic progress was concerned. That denying or not recognizing various views or not allowing various views to come to the fore and to be debated was something that created serious harm within the society and affected society. And therefore, this youth parliament, by offering an opportunity for young people to have the discussions and debates in this form, I'm sure will contribute to the important thing of inculcating and entrenching democratic norms and democratic forms of behavior within the society, despite sometimes the frustrations that we face. I remember once the former famous British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who said, "A democracy is a terrible system except all the others that exist." So, democracy, of course, evolves over the time. Parliamentary democracy began sometimes in the 17th century and has evolved, and some countries have adopted different methods and different forms. However, the main idea and the result is the same: to make Parliament a deliberative body, a body where discussions can be held and debates can be held, a body where many policies of the executive can be debated, improve, and move things forward. Your topics that you are discussing today, I just had a chance to briefly have a look at your paper, having only just come back into the country this morning. I think that you have indeed touched on some very important topics and essential topics for our development. In the first instance, on the question of infrastructure, I think it is undeniable to say that infrastructure is extremely important towards economic development. And the fact that you're debating this today, it shows that you recognize how important this is for any country's development, and you're willing to debate the subject in full. Of course, our parliament over the years, our country over the years have had a kind of a mixed experience in many of these type of parliamentary debates. We had in the post-independent period where Parliament was reduced to a rubber stamp, and it was only used to pass government measures. And then from 1992 to now, it has become increasingly a body for what it has been the role it is expected to play as a deliberative body, and to improve and examine and be a real oversight body on the work of the executive. In this regard, we have not only had parliamentary democracy and debates at the general sessions of Parliament, but we have created in our Parliament more and more the practice of using select committees where parliamentarians can work together. Never mind you have a division on the floor of opposition and government, but where parliamentarians will see themselves or their role as first and foremost the development of our society. Over the years too, we have created standing committees in the National Assembly, something that we never had before, so that all parliamentarians can have a bigger say, not only in oversight in the National Assembly, but the possibilities to influence policies and influence directions on which our country has been going. And that process is still evolving within our society to strengthen the democracy within our society. However, I think being a young parliamentarian, it is good again, as I've said, that you orient yourselves towards remembering first and foremost that the national development is the most important body, the most important feature, the most important goal of that every member of Parliament should have. Unfortunately, this 10th Parliament in our society is proving to be the exception rather than what the rule should be in our society. I say this because many important national projects have been stymied. And what we're seeing happening in our parliament that we have to constantly resist and expose is an attempt to use parliament to attack the constitution in many ways and to try to use it for narrow political ends.